So, hey, Gabe, how's it going?
Good, good. Glad to be on another phenomenal episode of Safeonomics.
Yeah, really looking forward to this one with Nick Busietta from Liminal VR. Fascinating stuff they're working on.
Yeah, it's a really amazing discussion. And again, to preface it, just like our other conversations with folks that are in tech in safety, there's a lot of discussion on the learning process and the people that are involved in it. So the technology itself is amazing. How it's being applied is, to me, that was really even the more fascinating part.
Yeah, I think, in the discussion, like you said, they've got developers working on the simulations, but they
Right.
have more brain scientists, behind the scenes working on the science of learning and how that experiential learning can really impact the learners and longevity of those lessons. So that was fascinating.
Yeah, and what Nick talks about too, and I'm gonna pull a Jamie Young here and do a little bit of a spoiler, and it he talks about how there are these technologies that are being deployed and developed, and it's this is not just a pie in the sky sort of technology. It's actually literally being used in real time right now. There
Right.
are actual organizations that are deploying it. They are using it and seeing benefits from it. And I know Nick talks about that a little bit. And if it's something that you as a listener are interested in learning more about, it's not just a crazy sci-fi tech thing that's out there anymore. This is really something that is real and it's getting better all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So buckle up and get ready for a fun ride with Nick and drop comments, reach out, let us know what you think.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I'm Scott Cuthbert, co-founder of Safeopedia,
And I'm Gabe Encarnacion, Vice President of BBL Safety.
and we're here for I guess, our final episode of 2023 for Safeonomics. So
Yeah, it's blown by.
yeah, it's amazing, and I think we were keeping track of that. What is it? Most podcasts stop after 3 episodes or something. So
Yeah, it's like 3 or 8 or something like that. And we just
yeah,
kept going. So
yeah,
yay.
so good for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're super excited to be ending the year with. We want to have a fun, intriguing episode to kind of wrap up the year, and we have Nick Busietta with us, who's managing director at Liminal VR. So we're gonna talk about VR and the impacts that can have on organizations' training and safety programs, and hopefully talk a little bit about where it's going to go in the future. So, Nick, do you want to do a quick intro so everybody knows a little bit more about you?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me to start with. Really great to be on this podcast with you guys. I've watched a couple of your podcasts and they've been really great and informative. So it's a real thrill to be here.
Awesome.
So yeah, look, my name's, as you said, Nick Busietta. I'm the managing director of LiminalVR. We're a virtual reality studio based in Australia, and we focus on the application of neuroscience and cognitive psychology to develop transformative virtual reality experiences. We do a lot of different things. When you're a VR company, it's an emerging industry, and so it's I'm hoping we're moving out of the period where it's considered a niche industry, and it's starting to take foot a little bit more now. But you tend to spread yourself around a lot of different areas. So we, as a studio, first and foremost, have a consumer platform called the Liminal platform, which is a platform of short virtual reality experiences designed to change how people feel and perform. And that's available for download on the Meta Store if you have a Meta Quest headset, which we can talk about. And we also do a lot of work with industry and clients, creating sort of custom VR, AR simulation projects, and do a lot of work in the safety space. So we do things from soft skills training, where we're dealing with interpersonal dynamics, to sort of hard skills training, where you might be on site in a, in the field as a technician or on a construction site, and we're simulating different scenarios of where you're applying your skills in a I guess operational and contextual context. So that's at a high level what we do, but we also have a very strong research and development focus as a studio. So we have not just your typical team where you have the developers and 3D artists and animators and script writers and project managers and sound designers, and that typical team that you get, with where you're sort of creating these interactive simulations. But we've also got a dedicated research team with a behavioral neuroscientist and an emotion and cognition analyst with a PhD in psychology. So that's, yeah, I guess there's a lot of things we can expand on there, but in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I was gonna hope, of course, my dog's been like sleeping all day long, and now she's barking at the door. So hopefully the mic's not picking that up. But I was gonna say that because VR, I think, was emerging, and then it subsided a little bit. My amateur impression with COVID and just equipment sharing and all the things that went on, so it took a little bit of a lull, and now it's back. But my understanding on the neuroscience side of things was that the training and the augmented experiences are more impactful, and people that go through them retain more of the experience, the knowledge, the learning, than if it was a classroom simulation. So I don't know if you can expand on that a little bit, or kind of maybe explain the neuroscience behind that.
Yeah, sure. So I think to explain it, we probably need to go to some basics about what virtual reality is, and then I can talk about how that differs from conventional training. So with virtual reality, you're wearing a headset, you've got controllers, and these days they're standalone headsets. They're not hooked up to powerful computers like earlier generation hardware. But when you're in virtual reality, you're situationally placed in a virtual world. So in sort of traditional, say, games, for example, you're playing a video game with a controller, and there's a clear separation from you and the 3D environment you're observing on the screen. In virtual reality, you're in there, so you are a participant inside this virtual world. You have agency, and you get this sense of space, this sense of perceptual depth. So 3D objects and 3D assets look 3D just like they would in the real world. So that has this ability to, I guess, affect people emotionally and cognitively in ways that you don't get from other media. So when you're in VR and you're hooked in like that, you have a really well-crafted experience will induce what's known as a sense of presence. So the idea that you have this cognitive buy-in where you're, as far as parts of your brain are concerned, it's not that you are experiencing being in there. As far as it's concerned, you are there. So that has really enormous benefits from a learning and development point of view, and also from a well-being point of view, to leverage that effect and channel the effects in targeted ways. So so yes, it has been I guess shown in numerous studies. There was a famous PwC study that showed it improved information retention and accelerated learning and things like that. And that employees preferred using virtual reality as a medium over other mediums like e-learning, for example. There's also been meta-analyses. There was one that was commissioned by the World Health Organization, where they were looking at it in the context of health training, and they found that, and sorry, it was the World Bank, not the World Health Organization. They found that across 90 different studies with different virtual reality content, the results were really powerful in terms of the effects they had on people's learning and development, from students to working professionals. So one point of difference between a VR simulation and traditional learning is, if you're in a classroom, or if someone's presenting to you from a PowerPoint, or if you're online answering questions in an e-learn or something like that, often what you're the learning design is information dissemination. So here's all this stuff you have to know. You go through this big, dense, condensed, usually written text with static image type information dissemination, and you're being bombarded with all this stuff that you don't necessarily absorb, and people are disengaged. They tend to click, just want to get through it. They might be looking that their phone might ring, and they might get distracted halfway through, and so there's it's not to say that there's not benefits to that, but it's also limited in some ways. Whereas with virtual reality, you put the headset on, you're blocking out the real world. Those real world distractions disappear, and it's just you inside this world. And you're not just being disseminated information that you need to grasp. What you're doing is, with a properly crafted virtual reality solution, we're creating context, and you're creating, and you actually have to do stuff in that world. So you're engaged. It's facilitating contextual learning and active learning, and you can do things, you can make mistakes, you get real-time feedback in the moment that you did something wrong or you did something right. And you can leverage those effects from game design, where you can get that dopamine hit giving that positive or negative reinforcement. And that has this real powerful effect on not just you emotionally, but also your awareness of, okay, this was the impact of having approached this problem in this way. And the other thing to note is, because you're in the environment and we're delivering experiences, not necessarily just information, you're effectively, I guess, engaging different neural pathways in the brain. We're effectively encoding memories rather than concepts. So, for example, if when people walk away from the VR scenario, that they're more likely to remember it 6 months later than that e-learn that they did amongst all the other e-learns. So there's a lot of unique benefits of virtual reality that can explain these effects that from a learning and development point of view.
Yeah, there's a couple things that you said that I really kind of latched onto. One is that looking at that experiential learning, and there's discussion about different learning styles, what people prefer, things like that. I know for me, I can read a manual or just text, and there's some things that if I'm learning it, I'd prefer to have it that way instead of someone lecturing me on it or something. Whereas others are a lot more auditory learners, and then you have the other types that are the hands-on, learn by doing folks, which is absolutely, that's fantastic. It's really difficult to do in a digital environment. So doing something in VR, as you said, it starts to activate that actual learning by doing, because you are in the environment. It's not that you have to pretend to be in there. You are actually experiencing it in a virtual environment. The other thing that I thought was really neat too is that you said was about even the sense of time that was in it. And Scott and I have had these discussions about synchronous and asynchronous learning, and how when something happens in real time synchronously, it seems to have much higher value. You retain it better. So having a conversation like we're doing now in real time would be very different than if we read a transcript of this conversation down the line. You get actual real-time feedback. And I think that in certain cases, probably for a lot of people, actually, the learning seems to be a lot more effective it sticks much better because you get to experience it in a very unique way, as if you were at a training facility or doing the specific task in real time.
That's right. And the other thing to note is often you can conceptually grasp something, but you don't necessarily know how to do it. So
I agree with that. Yep.
Yeah.
so, for example, we did this project about 18 months ago now. We wound it up on aggression de-escalation training, and you can tell people about the principles of active listening. You can know that you need to nod, maintain eye contact, and paraphrase and listen, and show someone that they've been heard. It's one thing being able to say, yeah, you do this, and this. It's another thing actually doing it in the moment. And so like, or even just interpreting the cues that you conceptually know. Okay, this person is getting aggravated. They're in this escalation phase now. It's another thing being able to see it in real time and can see that that's happening. So there's like that ability to give yourself real time feedback. When you're you might get a prompt. You might have to say, okay, what's going on here? What should I do next? And then you have to kind of stop, evaluate, and then if you get it wrong, it will tell you, and you'll get that feedback. It's like, okay, well, I may know this conceptually, but putting it into practice as a skill is a separate thing. That and you're able to deliver these standardized solutions, these standardized scenarios that I guess you can build in streamlined approaches to helping people develop these skills. And so if, for example, in an aggression de-escalation context, if say, you find yourself in a situation in the future where you are exposed for the first time in the real world to potential occupational violence that may you've just never come across before in real life. It's not the same as the real thing, but having gone through a simulation, it's like, okay, I've kind of got a little bit of a framework now to sort of spot the issues and kind of understand, how I might go about this situation in this real world. So you're better placed having been exposed to these hazardous situations in virtual reality. So when you encounter them in real life, you've got something to draw on, and you've got an experience to draw on that can help you navigate that situation.
Yeah, well, and you said earlier, and I've heard it before, that your mind doesn't know the difference between the augmented or virtual reality and reality. So the experiential component of that training is the same, and you can do the de-escalation, or emergency evacuation training without the fear of actual harm, coming to you, or somebody, punching you in the nose if you get your response to the de-escalation wrong, right?
Yeah, that's right. And like, for example, and that's not just applicable to soft skills training, it's applicable to hard skills training as well. So we did this project with a company in Australia called InfraBuild, that's a steel manufacturer, and we recreated a digital twin of a hydraulics factory. So where you're melting the components into steel and forming them in blocks. And so with hydraulics, that's a situation, to oversimplify what that is, it's manipulating pressure in pipes. So liquids travel through pipes in certain ways, and it has this mechanical effect downstream in a manufacturing process, at least in as it applied in this case. So if you forget to pull a lever, or don't depressurize the valve, or do something before taking certain steps, you can in effect spray yourself with really molten hot liquid and die. So that is obviously something that you don't want people to make mistakes doing in the real world, but you can safely expose people to hazards with no real world consequences, and create this sense of pressure, and by sort of pulling emotional levers in the virtual reality design process. And that can have this benefit. It's like, okay, I made a mistake, during an onboarding scenario. It's standardized, it's going to be the same every time. And so people can learn by doing without the consequences of doing if they stuff something up. And that's a real that's a really powerful and obvious application in a safety space, like with virtual reality, that safe exposure to hazards. Often that could be just following a process to the letter, or it could be sort of unforeseen events like low probability, high consequence scenarios that might emerge in a workplace that you need to identify and adapt to in real time. There might be a specific process that is super important, that saves lives, but doesn't come up day to day, and you might only come across that once in your career, but like at least people are prepared for that scenario because they do come up.
Yeah, I think that's such a neat perspective on it too, especially when you were even talking about some of the soft skills like the conflict de-escalation, and then even some specific training situations on equipment or hard skills of some sort of like that, where to set up a simulation, let's say if you were even to try to run a live test in real life, so that itself may be extremely prohibitive. Maybe it's a specialized piece of equipment that if you were to actually deploy it or deploy the safety measures on it, just doing that, even if nothing was going wrong, could be very costly in time, in personnel hours and money. But to create it as a simulation in a digital environment and have people be able to react to it over and over again and train on it without having that enormous cost of just running the test or running the simulation, I think that's a huge win. And as you said, there's some of those situations you might never actually see it it'll be very, very rare that you would run into it, but maybe you'll see something similar. So maybe you don't have a situation where someone is getting violent in the workplace, but if you had trained for that, if someone was getting, let's say, just belligerent or something, maybe that would help you to react to that better. But you're actually training in a situation that is much easier to replicate with multiple people and to do it in different scenarios. So that's pretty fascinating and neat application of the technology.
Yeah, and in that hydraulics scenario I spoke about before, that's a very, very expensive facility. There's no real world replica somewhere. So for example, if that facility is not operational, it's costing thousands of dollars a minute just when the system's down. So that makes training very complicated. Like just getting people on site. It's not like you can stop production. So someone is there in a live site and being shadowed by a facilitator who's watching their every move and making sure that they're following the process to the letter, and they'll keep shadowing them until you're 100% certain that they know the ropes and that they're not going to make any major errors. And that's the way it works. Like you need to be literally handheld by an experienced hand, whereas in virtual reality you're not just not having to worry about shutting down the facility or even breaking the equipment. You also are avoiding that cost of labor of having someone not fulfilling their role while they're training you. So you're saving that labor expense of having someone shadow you. And also there's the just the human factor with training as well. Like people forget to say certain things. It's an important point that you need to remember. And it's like, oh, I forgot to tell this guy to do this and this. When with a simulation, there's no skipping steps. It's a standardized, scalable, enterprise deployable solution that once it's developed, it can be spread far and wide and used in onboarding over and over again, year on year on year. So that one-off sort of expense in in developing it will pay itself off over and over again over time. So there's lots of these benefits that may not be immediately apparent to organizations when they look at implementing a solution like virtual reality. Like they think, well, we need to make budget for this because it's not business as usual, which is fair enough. So we've got this sort of small like innovation budget over here that we can possibly use to have a small pilot, which is fine. But then I guess really I think where I think we need to get to is moving beyond doing these one-off pilots. And it's like, okay, move the thinking forward away from just creating a pilot and a one-off training program and see how it goes, to thinking about it as a solution. How do we approach this in a way? Where are the opportunities for cost savings over time, and taking a more strategic view to building something that's gonna pay itself off multiple times over? And that's, I think, the next step as this technology becomes more and more accessible, and it has come leaps and bounds in the last couple of years. I think that's where we're going to see organizations going, because with technologies such as generative AI and just the tools that are available, like the cost of developing VR solutions is coming down as well. So I think we're going to see increasing adoption as the years go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say our last episode with Larry and Georgie, we went really deep kind of on doing cost benefit analysis and net present value and payback periods and those sorts of things. So I could see organizations again, maybe not sure about that initial investment, because I imagine it takes a fair bit to get it set up, but that if you look, and again, I'm sure you could help, we could help anyone who's trying to figure out what that total cost of ownership is, or what that return looks like over multiple years. But just maybe to give people a little bit of a flavor for it, I'll put you on the spot, but like setting up in this hydraulic shop, like how long did it take you to create that simulation, and then how easy is it to modify? So let's say you swap out a piece of equipment 2 or 3 years from now. Do you have to scrap the whole thing and start over, or can you kind of modify as you go?
Yeah, so look, it's I wouldn't have the exact development time at my fingertips, but what I will say is a project like that, to create that facility, that was a quite a large program. There were 12 different scenarios or modules within this one facility, so we're training a lot of different things. We probably did that, I would guess, over a 6 to 8 month period. It's very modifiable. We can, if you build, going back to what I said earlier with the taking a solutions-based approach rather than treating things as a one-off pilot, you can build things with scalability in mind if you approach it through that strategic lens, and then build things in a way that are much easier to adapt and change courses as operations evolve. And it's also I think part of the strategy is to, okay, well, where's the bang for your buck here with this with this investment? We want to do something in VR. What is something that we can get maximum impact for every dollar invested, and longevity? So you wouldn't necessarily want to invest big dollars into a big comprehensive training simulation for something very niche, or that is likely to change over time. But if there's small modifications and adjustments in the process that you need to you may implement down the track, that's very modifiable in virtual reality. Like being digital, it's a lot easier to modify a digital piece of equipment than a real physical piece of equipment. So you don't have components, you don't have parts. What we're effectively doing is pushing pixels in a different way. So there's a lot of flexibility to adapt these things over time.
Yeah, I was thinking that there is probably there are probably some economies of scale that need to be brought into that cost benefit analysis, because the longer you use it and the more people you have working on a simulation that is not just modifiable but repeatable over time. I mean, you won't maybe in the past you were able to run that training once a year. Now you could do it multiple times a year, and it you had the initial investment, but now it's the cost per training is starting to go down dramatically.
That's right. And also one, for example, and I guess we're finding ourselves talking a lot about hydraulics here, but that's fine. So if once you've created that digital twin of the hydraulics facility, that's not going to change. So for example, if the client wanted to expand from, and we're actually in discussions with them about this, expand from 12 modules to 20 modules, we don't need to recreate everything again. It's like, okay, we've lifted out, we're starting from this base instead of down here. We don't need to reimagine what model every nook and cranny of this facility. It's like, okay, well, we've got all the assets there. It's just about creating a learning design for each module, depending on what they want to, what the training objective is that they want to teach. And the other thing too is, it's not necessarily, maybe what would be useful is talking about just our process when we go about designing one of these, because I think one of the challenges we get is people come to us, hey, we want to do this virtual reality solution for XYZ, and it's like, but they don't necessarily know where to start. That people don't necessarily know what to tell us. And so we at the beginning of every project, there's this, we're having to sort of work together with the client to have this meeting of the minds. Like, Liminal are not hydraulics experts, we're virtual reality and learning design experts through that medium. So we need a subject matter expert on the other end of the project who will help sort of guide us and make sure we're doing things and implementing them in the right way, and we're interpreting the process correctly. Often the nuts and bolts, like with simulation, really matter. The details really matter, and often these are details that on a day-to-day level, a subject matter expert, or operator won't even think about. It so obvious to them, but for us, we have to create it. So there's often we ultimately want a learning design, like a high level snapshot of this is brought in the broad, how a scenario might unfold. Then if there's a very specific technical process that we need to know, videos and manuals and reference materials, images, that kind of thing is really helpful because it demystifies things for us. And then we sort of work together. We've actually got a script writer at Liminal, and we'll then create a script which guides people through the development the scenario from start to finish. So we take into account, okay, well, where's the user standing? What are they seeing around them, like specifically, and then we've got, okay, well, we usually factor in, there'll be some kind of narration. So we have this voice of God in your ear who's telling you, giving you some conceptual knowledge. There may occasionally be characters in the scene, like who are the characters? What are they saying? What do you say back? What are the options? And so you start to really drill down, and that's an iterative process. It could be like, okay, well, what interactions do we do? What do we need to tell people about the controls and the onboarding process? So so that initial scoping phase is really, really important because it sets the foundation for the experience. And then we try and get to a prototype as early as possible. It may not be the most beautiful looking experience at the prototype stage, but it demystifies for everyone what it is that we're actually creating. We like to get that done as early as possible when working with a client, to make sure that everyone's on the same page and there's no surprises. 3 months in, hey, I didn't think it was going to look like this kind of thing. We want to sort of get that out of the way as early as possible. And then yeah, we once we sort of sign off on the prototype, then we're just charging ahead full scale development, and we're expecting at that stage things aren't going to change in any dramatic sense between there and the finish line. We'll have iterative review points along the way, but generally we hope that most of the heavy lifting from a co-design point of view is done upfront during that sort of scripting and prototype stage of the project.
So this reminds me I was going to say, this reminds me a lot of kind of like modern open world game design. Is that essentially you're starting with the problem you're trying to solve. Essentially, how do you win the game? And then what are all the factors that go into it? Who are the additional players? What are the tools that you need in order to go on this quest or whatever that you're doing? And then you're building the world so that people can actually interact in it. So it sounds very similar to that, which is amazing.
Well, it is that. I mean, Gabe, what we're talking about is really game development. We don't like to use that term very much when we're talking to enterprise clients, because it kind of trivializes what it is that we're doing. But from a development point of view, it's exactly the same thing. Like you create the world. You're building that world around a user. You've got problems that you need to solve. And challenges that you need to meet along the way, and you get feedback in response to those challenges, whether you get it right or wrong. So in many ways, like the process is the same. Like for Liminal, we could easily go down that game development direction if we wanted to as a studio, because a lot of the thinking behind the design and development of these things is very similar, and we're using the same tools. Like 3D assets are created with certain software. We use game engines to create VR simulations, like we do with if we were creating a video game. So it's not a crazy analogy to what we do in games.
Well, I was gonna say, you mentioned you have the narrator, but I hope you have like the 70s soundtrack from those safety training videos that we all had to watch at one point.
They're terrible.
Well, we can make things as cheesy as you like, Scott. Just you name it. Like if we're working on a project together, I can make it really, really terrible if that's what
I don't think that was a challenge.
Yeah. No. Well, but you also mentioned that there might be other characters in the simulation. And I was wondering about team learning. Like, are we at the point where 2 or 3 people could be in the same VR experience and going through that training together?
Yep. So there's a lot of scope to create multiplayer environments, again, to draw on a game terminology. So there's lots of virtual reality experiences that have been developed where people are occupying shared spaces for training and for other purposes as well. So you can be collaboratively in a shared space, talking to each other, coordinating on a problem that you want to solve, and getting often it's really a question of what's the use case and deployment strategy as to whether that's a good idea or not. But it's certainly within our wheelhouse. We've done multiplayer experiences before where people are occupying shared spaces, and it's something that I think we're going to see more and more of as time goes on.
Yeah, I think when you have facilities that maybe have multiple locations, multiple branches, and they're all just maybe for all intents and purposes copies of one another, to be able to have people at each location cooperatively working on a training, that could be huge. Now, and I don't want this to sound negative by any means, but what are some of the objections that you're hearing from people when you come to them with a a VR training solution. And maybe, I mean, the first thing that pops in my head, if outside of the cost, some people think of that as just like, oh, well, we don't have remote teams or any remote employees, so we don't have to do anything online. We do all our training in-house or on location. But something like this would allow you to take those very expensive and cumbersome training scenarios and actually still be able to do it. But outside of that, what kind of objections are you hearing from people, and how do you cross those hurdles?
Yeah, so there's a lot of potential objections, and it's often idiosyncratic to the client.
Sure.
You know, one of the objections is literally the time for the individual involved to work with us. So that's why we really want to focus. That's one of the reasons we want to take as much of the load off the client as possible. So we have very, very streamlined processes in place to really get them to give us what we need as early as possible, and we'll have like a workshop up front, and we might do a site tour and take some photos, and or you know, if that's practical, or we might you know, just show us what resources you have already and see how we can convert. So often there's that, and there's also another objection, you know, and again, putting the cost aside, because that's always that's
right.
an easy one, but like there's just the I think from a client's point of view, they don't understand the technology well enough to be able to make an appropriate cost benefit analysis on the merits of doing it. So I think that scares people off. Like, I think there's this phenomenon where you know, the riskier the initiative, the more someone's personal stake in a company, you know, personal's reputation is at stake. Like, it's much easier making a mistake well, I guess in a way, moving forward with a sort of business as usual solution that everyone understands and is a known quantity, than to do this thing over here that hey, we're going to do VR all of a sudden, and then you're next on the line if it doesn't work out well. You know, that's then you're putting all your personal collateral at stake. So that's part of the reason we like to. I think that's the part of the reason a lot of organizations want to start small with a pilot, and then the challenge can be sometimes if you underinvest in the pilot, then you're not getting the outcome and the benefits that you're hoping to achieve. So there's a little bit of a tension there. It's like, well, let's scope this pilot properly so we can actually get some decent outcomes to report. And you know, often there's that sort of challenge. So often it's a chicken and egg problem, and the onus is on us as the developers to take potential clients through a process where we can demystify the process and give them a clearer understanding of what the benefits of this technology are, and how we can walk them through you know, helping them establish their business case, and just, you know, working through you know, often there's like these internal dynamics as well. You know, someone needs to present this to their manager or an executive, and they're people that we don't see. So you know, we might win over the people, you know, who we're talking to, but then so they're having to report this new, effectively new initiative and feed it up the line and get them to sign off on a business case. You know, like we're increasingly doing a lot more work with potential clients to get them to give them the collateral they need to help them sort of establish that business case, and you know, help sort of feed that information up the line.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just on the objection side. I was just curious because I can't remember if you mentioned it before we hit record or not, but that it's a lot of the equipment is the Quest, Oculus, the Meta account that somebody needs. Are any companies have concerns about security or privacy if you have to go through this kind of third-party account with Meta?
Yeah, so there are concerns. Often they're not as big an issue as people imagine them to be. You know, they're with like I guess the most widely used headset in the world is a Meta Quest headset, and being a Meta product, there's this, you know, for better or worse, there's people have impressions of Meta's handling of privacy with Facebook and what have you, that and so there's often this knee-jerk reaction against, you know, which I don't think is founded. Like, I think the security of these devices is a solved problem now. I think there was some friction early on that's been roughly resolved. So, like, from that point of view, yes, we do come across that, but I don't think it's a reason not to progress. Like, what we're talking about is realizing the benefits of many billions of dollars of investment in this hardware and this ecosystem. And you know, an organization like Meta, they want to see adoption of their headset, and they work really hard on trying to really sort of bring these you know, sort of pave the way forward for this ecosystem to work. And like, you know, we've reached a point now, just hardware acquisition, you can buy a device for less than $1,000, and that is, you know, when you compare that to, you know, purchasing enterprise grade laptops or other specialist equipment, given what you can get and the training outcomes that you can get from a technology like this, it's not a massive investment. Getting, you know, getting a few headsets that can be shared around a workplace to facilitate this kind of training. So I think, you know, over time, like that, like as more and more exposure to the benefits of this hardware become apparent to organizations, and it becomes a more and more normal thing to utilize it in workplaces, I think a lot of these objections are going to go away once people have more familiarity with what it actually is.
Yeah. What I found interesting too, and just to Nick, you said you had listened to a few of our prior episodes, and it is always funny to me whenever we have someone from a tech company or a tech organization, that inevitably the conversation becomes less about the tech and more about the people that are in it. And what I found fascinating looking at Liminal's website is that you have people that are in the neuroscience field and in the learning field that are on staff or that you were partnering with. And can you talk to us a little bit about that focus on the cognitive aspect, not even just the technology and building the world in VR, but even how do people learn? And it seems like you guys have quite the focus on the learning process and the neuroscience behind it.
Yeah, well, we are focused on delivering experiences. So an experience is not a technology. An experience is a human, you know, is the human relationship to that technology. So what we like with virtual reality, there's a lot of potential ways you can go about designing an experience. You can go from like hyper realistic experiences to very abstract experiences. You can have experiences that can generate sort of stress responses or fear responses, or you can have calming environments. You've got these choices with color design, and you've got interactions, and you've got, I guess you can have sort of guided voiceovers, or you can have characters talking at you in the same. So there's lots and lots of different ways a virtual reality experience can be designed or developed. And they all these choices that you make along the way has this effect on the user. And so for us, we were right from the very beginning, we were struck by, virtual reality's ability to, induce this sense of presence and this sense of awe you know, even in more primitive forms of the technology, it has this emotional effect that is profound and that you don't get with other mediums. And so for Liminal, the reason we established our research team is because we really wanted to specialize in affective design and the ability of virtual reality to induce these emotional and cognitive states in people. So what we did is in the early years, we spent a lot of time, you know, pouring through all this scientific literature, looking at all these, you know, different ways, you know, potential design factors that could be, I guess, utilized to induce these emotional and cognitive states in people. And we organized that into a document which we call the Psych Docs, and we make that available to partners all over the world who want to develop experiences for the product of all that, which is the Liminal platform. And the Liminal platform is a platform of short virtual reality experiences designed to change how people feel and perform. So, you know, you can see a little bit behind me of some of the 6 categories there. So we've got sleep, calm, pain, relief, which is pain relief, energy, awe, and focus. They all have different evidence-based design considerations behind them. We also have a system of psychometrics within the Liminal platform where we're evaluating experiences at scale. So, so we get pre and post measures of people's emotional responses to different experiences, and you know, and then we're ranking experiences in order of effectiveness and enjoyability based on that. So we've got like 6 categories of experience designed to change people's emotional and cognitive states, and a global partnership program where we work with developers all over the world. We share our research with partners, they build experiences on the platform, and then we evaluate, you know, those over time as people are responding to these psychometrics. So at the moment, we've got over 1.3 million psychometrics, over 100 experiences on the Liminal platform, and it's been deployed in many different contexts. It's currently in about 40 schools in Australia as part of a Commonwealth government funded grant as a tool for wellbeing. It's actually used by school counsellors to help sort of support and facilitate counselling sessions. We've had it used in employee wellbeing programs. We've had it used in hospitals. You know, we've got clinical trials that are ongoing, with one through Monash University, which is a major university here in Australia, where they're using it post-surgery. So women who's gone through a laparoscopic procedure, within 60 minutes of coming out of surgery, they're using one of our pain relief experiences, and we've been getting really great results in that, in a randomized controlled trial. So we're really committed to I guess, establishing and building an evidence-based approach to virtual reality design and development. And we see the Liminal platform as, I guess, the central nervous system of all that. The more we grow the Liminal platform, the more data we get on people's responses, and then the more we're learning about VR design as this sort of feedback loop that's really, I guess, really driving our mission. And then as part of that, we're learning things along the way, and we're developing training programs and working with clients, and where the fruits of that ends up, you know, informing our design and development of any like projects that we work with clients. It could be clinical products, or it could be training products, and we're always, you know, looking at ways to develop experiences in an evidence-based way that are going to deliver you know, profound and transformative outcomes for users. So yeah, there's a lot I could talk about, you know, regarding our research. But maybe one other aspect that I'll just touch on briefly, which is a current work in progress, is we have been like one of our researchers, Dr. Adam Barton, did a PhD in attention restoration theory, which is and focusing on the cognitive dimensions of virtual reality, and we're sort of leveraging a lot of the work he did with that to build our own cognitive assessments. to evaluate the cognitive impacts of different VR design approaches with, like, how do you develop virtual reality experiences to improve someone's attention and focus? You know, how do they, how well does someone perform after using certain types of content in, you know, sustaining attention on a task in the face of distractors? So there's you know, that's something that we're very excited about. Sort of literally, you know, we're literally about to launch our first pilot of that in the coming weeks. But we've also been applying a lot of that base knowledge from that research into a project that we've been working on with one of our clients in Australia, Endeavour Energy, which is like we'd previously developed single and three-phase installation training for Endeavour. So they were, you know, I guess if you're at a household and you're sort of hooking up and you know, the electricity and fault finding and things like that, there's a you know, very specific set of steps that you need to take to do that properly. When you but okay, so we created a training mode where you've got a guided walkthrough, an assessment mode where you're doing it without the guidance to sort of certify that someone has met their competency. And then we're now developing, and sort of in the last stages of developing, a distraction mode as part of the human factors training. So once we've confirmed that someone is competent, they know what they're doing, how do they go about performing that task in the face of distractions happening in their environment? So it could be like a cranky old man, you know, walks out and starts talking to you and asks annoying questions. Or there's a dog barking and banging against the fence behind you, or there's a car that sort of drives off, you know, drives past as really loud and causing a disruption. So right at the critical step, you know, like this is right where these things happen, right at the point where, you know, you're performing a very, very important task in the middle of like a complex sequence of things. If you make a mistake, you know, you could electrocute yourself or bring down the grid or something like that. So then okay, so what do you do in that situation? Okay, there's been this big distraction, it's taken my attention. Do you continue, pick up where you left off, or do you assume, okay, I kind of think I know where I'm up to, I'm pretty confident about that. Do you just follow the process and you know, pick up where you left off, or do you double back and err on the side of caution? Okay, let's just take a few steps back, start from the beginning again, and work our way up to following this process. So that's that hasn't been deployed yet. We're sort of in the final stages of development now, and yeah, we're really excited to see what sort of results they get. Like Endeavour are going to do a big pilot, and we're going to be getting some data, and which we like at Liminal, and
that's
seeing,
awesome.
Yeah, seeing what the results are.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's and again, I think, I mean, you know, what you described, you can't possibly recreate, you know, in real world training, right? Like to have all those things lined up perfectly like that, and yeah, just because kind of running up against the hour, and just to circle back on what Gabe said, I do think that it is, you know, about the humans in the equation, not about the technology. But wow, does this ever give organizations an amazing advantage and opportunity to train people, retrain people, you know, scale that training and really build in all the possible scenarios, as unlikely as they may be, into that training, so that they have competent, confident people out there working in the floor, because saving injuries, saving lives is really what it's all about at the end of the day. So
that's right. So yeah, from our point of view too, you know, we're very, very happy to engage. So the easiest path forward for an organization, if they wanted to work with us, is to I guess inquire about the Liminal platform. We have an enterprise program where you know, if you have access to MetaQuest headsets, and they're not that expensive, you know, we can grant enterprise licenses, and you know, you can use it as a tool for well-being in your workplace or whatever it may be. The alternative is if an organization wanted to explore, and it doesn't even have to be virtual reality, if they wanted to do interactive simulation, like a metaverse type project or augmented reality or virtual reality, you know, we're around and would be very, very happy to engage and just answer any questions. If as an outcome of anything we've discussed today, I'd be very happy to chat with anyone and you know, just help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We'll include your coordinates and your company website in the description when we release it, so people can encourage them to connect with you on LinkedIn and send you an email or reach out through the website with more questions. So thanks. It's certainly enlightening. Learned a ton. Excited about the possibility and really interested in your story and where you take Lumina.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott and Gabe. It's been really, really great chatting with you both, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right. Thanks.